now in the third week of our message series that we've been calling The Upside of Lockdown. It's a lighthearted look at life, at the lessons we can learn from life with COVID, now that it's almost over. And the great news this week is that we're back in purple status here in Marin County, California, which means the most recent shelter-in-place order has finally been lifted. We're able to move about a little bit more freely. Outdoor dining is back. Haircuts, thank God, are back. Retail shopping is back. Vaccinations are underway and are gaining momentum. So things are looking up. And if you're at home right now, why don't you chat with us and let us know, what is something you want to do now that the shelter-in-place order has been lifted? What are you most looking forward to? Is it like eating out? Or for me, it's getting a haircut because it's about time. Now, we're not out of the woods yet, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel, so it's the perfect time to look back at this last year and figure out our COVID takeaways. In this series, we're encouraging you to think through what you might want to keep from your life with the coronavirus. In the first week, we looked at how COVID might help permanently change your attitude about your home, how you look at your living space by turning it into more of a sacred space. And we suggested that you set aside an area of your home that's dedicated only to God, a place where you can go every day and be alone and pray or just have some reflection time in quiet, kind of like this home chapel that one of our parishioners sent in. Now, last week we looked at how COVID could actually improve your relationship with money. And we encouraged you to carry over the positive changes in your spending and saving habits to a post-COVID world and better honor God with your money. If you missed either of those episodes, you can watch them on our website at sthillary.org. Now, this week we dive into a third change that COVID can bring to your life. This one might be a little surprising, but integrating this change into your lifestyle over the long term will have some tremendous payoffs, like being able to clarify your priorities more easily and filter the opportunities that come along by focusing on what matters most. It will help you to face reality, deal with problems in a healthy way, envision more clearly what lies ahead, and avoid regrets down the line, all while maintaining an appropriate balance in your life. You know, if there's one thing that COVID has made crystal clear, it's the nearly unlimited capacity of the human species to adapt to rapidly changing environments. I mean, from the very start of this pandemic, humanity has demonstrated boundless ingenuity and creativity in adjusting to life with a potentially deadly virus. For example, over time, we've been able to make sense emotionally of having to wear masks. Ironically, now you can't even go into a bank without wearing a mask. We also figured out how to economize where it matters most. Personally, I got down to 3 squares. We adapted to working from home under, less than ideal conditions, and even developed new threats to keep the kids in line, like, don't you dare hurt yourself, because I'm not taking you to the ER for stitches. I'll sew you up myself. One mother actually told me she told her son. Well, we've also learned to assert our boundaries. I know one parishioner who uses this strategy every time she goes into the grocery store. And she also keeps other people off elevators by saying, I'm sorry, my doctor has told me that I should ride alone because I could make other people sick. It's very effective, works every time. We've also embraced alternate greetings with the elbow bump. We've discovered how to even celebrate the holidays with COVID, and somehow even managed to pick up that annoying little habit of waving at the end of every Zoom call. Why do we do that? I'm calling for a national boycott. Well, we have become experts in turning on a dime and switching up our plans. And so the third COVID takeaway that we're looking at this week is making a new plan for when all this is over. Now, you're probably already thinking, Father Roger, that's impossible. I can't make a plan. I can't plan. Normal life has been upended for almost a year, and 2021 is looking a lot like 2020. No one is really certain about where we're headed, what new strains are lurking around the corner, and when this is all going to be really over for good. Even with Dr. Fauci's uncharacteristically optimistic outlook recently, planning still seems a long way off. After all, if there's anything this pandemic has taught us, you might say, it's that you can't plan because anything could happen in life. But I want to push back on that a little bit. It's true, of course, that planning becomes more difficult when the future is uncertain, and it's less reliable when you're in the middle of a crisis. But it's also more necessary then. If the world were entirely predictable, there would be very little need to plan. Think about it. The future would be mostly foreseeable. Every outcome would be predetermined by the previous decision you've made, and getting from point A to point B would be relatively obvious. So planning would seem to be least necessary then. Actually, planning makes the most sense when life is the most unpredictable. Now, in case you didn't realize this, God is a planner. God plans. The nature of God is to plan order out of chaos. I mean, think about it. In the beginning, the Bible says, the earth was a formless wasteland, and darkness covered the abyss, while a mighty wind swept over the waters. Now, all of those are symbols of chaos: wasteland, abyss, and waters. But God had a plan. He separated day from night, the earth from the sky, and dry land from water. He populated the world with plants and creatures of all kinds in a delicate yet orderly ecosystem. But then, well, he made human beings. And there's nothing more chaotic, volatile, and unpredictable than human behavior. But with every crisis of humanity's own making, God made a new plan. Just for example, the first two humans, we hear about in that first Bible story from the book of Genesis, Adam and Eve. They rebelled against God. That's the way the story goes. And there were consequences for that. Bad ones. Their innocence was lost. They had to work to survive. Sin and death entered the world. Stuff like that. But even in that disaster, God made a new plan. He already set the stage for a Redeemer to come one day. And when later humanity had become thoroughly depraved and God destroyed the earth by a flood, as it's told in the Old Testament, well, he made another new plan, and he entered into a covenant with Noah, the only man who was spared. And we can still see the sign of that covenant even today. And then later, when Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery, which eventually led to the captivity of the Hebrew people in Egypt for 400 years. Even then, God made a new plan. He raised up Moses to lead the Israelites out of slavery. And after later settling into the Promised Land, the people were led astray by a line of corrupt kings, more chaos. Jerusalem eventually was destroyed, and the people were exiled. But then also God made a new plan. He raised up a man named Nehemiah to rebuild the walls of the city and restore the Jewish religion and culture. And then, hundreds of years later, after that, God made good on his promise of a Redeemer, and he sent Jesus. And here's the thing. When Jesus began his public ministry, look at what he did. He got his house in order immediately. He got to work right away. He got baptized. He went to boot camp in the desert, you might say. He selected his disciples, and he established a home base in a city called Capernaum. He got everything in order. And then what did he do? He went into the synagogue there at Capernaum on the Sabbath, and he taught the people. And the people were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority. And with that authority, as the story goes, he rebuked and cast out the spirit of evil from a man who was possessed. Now, it's significant that Jesus performs this miracle on the Sabbath because the Sabbath or the seventh day of the week, symbolizes the seventh day of creation in the Bible story in the book of Genesis, when God finished his work creating everything in perfect order and saw that it was good. And so this exorcism on the Sabbath is kind of a symbol. It signals the beginning of Jesus' mission of progressively dismantling the powers of darkness and chaos that had come to rule the earth after its creation and after humanity disobeyed God. Jesus spoke with authority in the synagogue because in himself he was revealing God's plan to save the human race from the chaos that we created. His teaching exposed evil so that it could be expelled, and the original order and harmony and justice that God had created in the very beginning could one day be restored. Wherever the power of sin and sickness, death, injustice, and division oppressed people, Jesus was there neutralizing it. He forgave sins, he healed disorders, he raised the dead, he established justice, and he brought peace and harmony back into the world. That was God's magnificent saving plan, because God's a planner. But guess what? God has a plan for you too. In the book of Jeremiah, it says, I know the plans I have for you. This is God speaking. I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Look, you may believe that your finances are a wreck, your love life a disaster, your family dysfunctional, your health beyond repair, or your job soul-crushing and inescapable. You may believe that you could never surmount the worst problem in your life right now. And I want to tell you this. The darkest powers of this world will speak into that if you let them. And they will hold you hostage with an iron grip around your throat. They want to thwart your success and keep you bound to lies and fears and addiction and lack of passion and meaning and discouragement and despair and every other negative behavior that will pull you off course and prevent you from living your best life. You see, wherever evil is in the world, it seeks to do one thing. It seeks to destroy the image of God within human beings. That's why God's plan is to rebuild that image and make you whole again. That's why the takeaway from COVID this week is to build a new plan for your life. Because if you don't do it, someone else will. So, we're talking about a life plan. What is a life plan, in case you've never heard of it? A life plan is a short written document that's created by you and for you. It describes how you want to be remembered, it articulates your personal priorities, and it outlines the specific actions necessary for you to take to get from where you are now to where you want to be in the future in every major area of your life. A life plan is driven by three powerful questions that you want to ask yourself. First of all, how do I want to be remembered? Really important question. And the first step in answering that question is to write your own eulogy. Yeah, I know that seems a little morbid, right? A little scary. Write your own eulogy. By the way, I've already decided what I want on my tombstone. I got this. I've already gotten my grave, which is in the special priest section of a local cemetery here, although I'm not really too happy with it because right in front of my plot, this priest right in front of me, he was pretty inconsiderate. He erected this huge Celtic cross that's obstructing my view for all eternity. But I've already decided what my tombstone is going to say. It's just going to say two words. He tried. Why don't you let us know on the chat what your tombstone might say? How do you want to be remembered by people? It's an important question to ask yourself. Write your eulogy as if it were being delivered today. And that can be a little unsettling because you might see some gaps between what people would say today in your eulogy and what you would like them to say. And that's why the next step is to describe how you want specifically to be remembered. by people like your spouse and your kids, your friends, your colleagues. So the goal, after you've written your eulogy, write down specifically what you want your legacy to be. Think through it carefully. You know, everyone leaves a legacy. The trick is to leave the legacy you want to leave. The second question, after asking yourself, how do I want to be remembered, is what matters most? It's about setting priorities. And to do that in a life plan, you basically identify some life accounts. Like, think of it like accounting. You know, every business has a list of accounts, and the balance in those accounts increase or decrease depending on how the business is doing. So start by thinking of all the various compartments that make up your life. Obviously, you're one of those compartments. Your spiritual, physical, and emotional, intellectual well-being is one account. But other accounts could be things like your spouse or your kids or grandchildren, your extended family, friendships, your job, school, hobbies, whatever. You decide. Most people have about 10 or 12 of these accounts. And then you determine what your balance is in each of these accounts. How are you doing right now? And you do that by looking at two things: your progress in each account and your passion in each account. How passionate are you about this account, and how successful are you? So for instance, you may be tearing it up at work, experiencing tremendous success in your career, making a lot of progress, but maybe you've lost your passion for it. Or in the other direction, maybe your greatest passion in life is for your kids or your grandkids, but maybe you're not making much progress because they're out of control or they're out of touch. So think about that. Think about making a benchmark in each one of those life accounts, an honest assessment of where you are right now. And then order those accounts from most important to least important. Now, once you've figured out your priorities, the third question is, how can I get from where I am to where I want to be in each account? And to have clarity on that, take each of these accounts and state your purpose for that account. For instance, you might have a spouse account if you're married, and you want to write in that account what your purpose is. What is your purpose with respect to your spouse? It could be something like, you know, I love my wife and care for her as my best friend. Put it in your own words, of course. Be creative and be descriptive. And then envision the future. That's what you're doing. Your purpose is the future, the ideal future, where you want to be in that account. For example, in your finance life account, you might say, I am completely debt-free and have savings to cover unexpected expenses. That's your purpose in your account. That's where you want to be at some point in the future. And after you've envisioned that future, you need, as we said, to determine your current reality. Where are you right now? And then you write down some commitments. What are 3 or 4 things, very specific actions that you are going to do, and when you're going to do them, that will move you from where you are right now to the future you desire. And those commitments should be specific, measurable, and realistic. Describe them in the form of a concrete action that you will take within a certain period of time. That's it, basically, for a life plan. Now, to do it, you'll need to set aside a full day to write your life plan, and don't complete it in piecemeal. You need time and breathing room to get immersed in the experience. Otherwise, it won't have the emotional impact, and you'll end up with a glorified to-do list. Anything worthwhile requires time and dedication. Your life plan is worth that kind of commitment. Don't skimp on something that important. Block off the whole day for this experience. Get away from some familiar surroundings. Go somewhere different and put your phone and all your devices on airplane mode for the entire day. And also, have the right attitude about this day. Pick a day and then be happy about it. Be grateful for the opportunity. Thank God for this day that you can spend writing your life plan. Embrace the experience and be open to what the Lord will share with you during your time alone with Him. Now, I know this was a lot to cover, but it comes from a book that you can get. It's a really easy book to read. It's called Living Forward by Michael Hyatt and Daniel Harkavy. Daniel is the mentor the coach for actually my coach right now that I've been working with for the last 6 months to help me with stuff like this. So I highly believe in this process, writing down a life plan, thinking through your life. And do you know why? I'll tell you why. Because Satan has a plan for your life. And I promise you, it's not a good one. You may not believe in the devil or demons or, the personification of evil. You may dismiss that Christian teaching and consider malevolent beings to be, just fairy tales or maybe symbols of more impersonal forces. That's okay. I'm not here to argue that. But I think we can all agree that you don't have to look very far to see evidence of the influence of evil in this world. Racism, child abuse, abortion, human trafficking, and other atrocities, along with ordinary everyday selfishness, hatred, injustice, and callous indifference to human suffering, these are all proof enough, isn't it? That the forces of evil and chaos are still in our world. And they all have the power to destroy the image of God living within you and within me. They have the power to convince you that there is no hope left. They have the power to keep you adrift from your God-given purpose in life. If there's anything COVID can teach us, it's actually that planning through every crisis is not only possible, it's critical. So, do the world a favor. Shine a light on the powers of darkness. Bring order into chaos by taking the time to formulate your own life plan, getting your life in order today. For as the Bible says, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and your plans will succeed.